everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elaine's Literary Salon. I believe this is our 132nd interview, so I'm excited about today. Today, we're interviewing Michael Slavin. Michael is the author of 4 published crime thrillers with multiple awards, with a 5th ready for release, as well as a best-selling nonfiction title, 1 Million in the Bank, which has won 7 awards. A graduate of West Point, Mike served 10 years as an Army officer, including assignments as an infantry officer, armored cavalryman, aviation commander, general's aide, and even aide to the President of the United States during a visit to South Korea. After leaving the military, he founded and served as CEO of a successful oil and gas exploration company for 24 years. Known for fast-paced, morally complex stories, Mike draws on his rich life experience, military, business, and personal, to craft page-turning novels of justice, vengeance, and survival. So, welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So one of the beauties of not scripting out our interviews at Elaine's Literary Salon is I can ask the questions that I know all readers want to hear. It always aggravates me when people have the questions pre-planned and the author says something that's really provocative or interesting and they just move on to their next question. So you just mentioned being bankrupt and then having $1 million in the bank in 3 years. That's fascinating. I mean, we don't have to go into it. It's not really what you're writing now, but I am sure everyone's wondering, how the heck did that happen?
Okay, I was recruited out of the Army, and the people who recruited me out were not completely honest. I gave up a 20-year career wanting to be a general officer on track, top 5% of my year group, just, combat officer. I loved it. I was good at it, but I was made a really good offer at the time. I think it was, at the time, it was like 120,000 and a percent of the company, which should be about 500,000. So, I mean, you got to make decisions. And I decided I would try that out. I got out, and within about 2 months, they wanted to fire me for BS reasons. There were 2 partners, and they were at odds with each other. They had no clue what they had asked me to give up. And now they're just trying to dump me out of the company. So I was not happy at all, and I let that be expressed. So they told me I could keep my office, and they would keep paying me up to 6 months until I found another job. So I did that, but I really couldn't find anything I wanted. Army officers looking for a senior executive job are pretty, at least at the time, are pretty tough. The skills, they don't think transfer, civilians don't. So I struggled for 7 years. Because of that, I did go bankrupt. But I learned to raise money, and I learned to raise money in oil and gas. And I didn't like the guys that had taught me that. I told them I made many recommendations, but they wouldn't take any of my recommendations, so I told them I had to leave. I raised $200,000 to help bridge the gap for me. I put together an oil and gas exploration company, and I started drilling wells with investors. And within 3 years, I didn't make $1 million, I had $1 million in the bank. And it kept going. I mean, my company was doing great. I had it for, I don't remember exactly, 25 years maybe. My wife got Parkinson's. She was integral to the company. She was my CFO. She organized all the stuff underneath the selling and the drilling, the things that have to get done that nobody wants to do. And it was getting difficult. So we sold the company. I was sitting home on the couch next to her, taking care of her. And I thought, why not write a book? So I took my laptop out, sat down, no idea what to do, no idea of so many different things. You talk about not having a clue. I didn't have a clue, but I decided I wanted to write a thriller. So I just started banging on the computer, and I looked up somewhere and it said it should be 80 to 100,000 words. So I did the math, and I needed around 1,500 words to get a novel done if I wrote every day for about 60 days. I did that. In 60 days, I had my first novel done, which is Kill Crime. Little did I know all the huge mistakes I had made in there. Just so many things. It's even embarrassing to say. I introduced a major character way too late in the book. Wound up having to throw out 20,000 words, add 20,000 in, move that character to the front, Of course, all the normal things of getting the tints right through editing and beta reads. So it took me probably another year to really make it a novel, but I pounded out that draft in about 60 days, and that is a huge sense of accomplishment, as I'm sure you know, when you get that first book done, regardless of how crummy it is. Which leads me to the advice I tell anybody who's struggling with getting a novel done. Don't worry about it. Get the words out. I don't care how bad it is. If you don't have a completed draft of some kind, you don't have a book. So just get it done, then edit, beta read, work on it, then you'll get your book. But I run into a lot of people that ask me for advice. You know, I've got a chapter written, I've got half of it written, I can't seem to finish it. And my advice is stop thinking about it and write it, which leads me to advice that I like to give people too. I never have a writer's block. Never. If I'm sitting there writing, looking at the wall for more than about 15, 20 minutes, I just jump into an action scene. It doesn't have to be fitting in the storyline or anything. I just take one of my characters and I write the most exciting action scene I can possibly find. And it always flows back into the story somewhere. So that's my advice if anybody ever gets writer's block, which is off the subject. I got way off the subject of the $1 million in 3 years.
No, it's really great advice for sure. I mean, I give that very similar advice myself. So there's a lot there. Let's just unpack that a little bit. How first of all, like how hard is it for people coming out of the military to like reintegrate? And you mentioned everything you gave up, and you had a long career, 20-year career, and a long track. When you move into the civilian world, you're dealing with a different ethical standards, right? You're dealing with a different culture, and it sounds like you kind of ran headlong into the bad end of that. How hard is it for veterans when they're coming out?
Well, you know, I'm speaking from a different time frame. I guess I got out in about 90 or 89, maybe, something like that. Graduated 75 as in 10 years, so I guess I got out in about 85. Uh, but a lot of those same problems I know exist today. It's very hard for a civilian to equate the kind of experience that a military person has had. A military person, and I'm speaking very generally, of course, is very heavy in leadership and accepting responsibility and not making a lot of excuses and making sure they get the job done. They're very job oriented, you know, the mission comes first, or mission and men, that's a whole nother kind of discussion. But civilians don't appreciate it. I went to so many job interviews at that in-between period, those 7 years in between. I just, it dumbfounded me. These people couldn't see my value. I mean, I saw myself as a CEO of any corporation out there, and they just saw me as not even worthy as bringing in as a sales guy or a mid-level management guy. It baffled me, you know.
Was that because they didn't understand the value of your military experience, or what someone at your level actually was doing in the military, and how many men you were commanding, and the stakes that were involved?
I think it was mostly because they just, yes, what you said is exactly right. But I think a lot of it is they're looking for a square peg to put into a square hole. You are not a square peg. You know, you're coming a little different. They don't quite appreciate it. You know, honestly, in retrospect, I felt that I came in too strong. I mean, it's not like I was a butthole or a real aggressive, but I was extremely confident. And so I would bring that confidence to my interviews, right? And I really think it was maybe a little threatening in a lot of the interviews I went to. You know, they don't really want somebody coming in and bashing the thing, or, you know, breaking the place up, trying to change things. They don't want that. They want you to come in, fit into the position they put you in, and to do what they want you to do. And in hindsight, I think that I was just a little too strong in the interviews. I would not be surprised if that's true of most military, especially officers, senior NCOs. You know, they're used to getting things done. They're confident people. They come in and they express that. And if you've got an either or, maybe you're going to take the guy or gal you think is going to follow your orders better, which is so ironic because the guy that salutes and takes charge and runs up the hill, that's the guy that's going to follow orders. I mean,
Do you think that confidence is what allowed you to take the big risk? I mean, you learned oil and gas exploration. You went out and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding, and then you started a new business. I mean, that takes a lot of courage, right? Do you think that that confidence allowed you to make kind of that bold play?
well, absolutely. I mean, I'm a confident guy, and I think anybody who's really confident, as a matter of fact, that brings me back to the book, okay? The 1 million in the bank book. I felt that because I struggled for 7 years, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know that you could put companies together by just being the money guy and bringing everything together that way. I didn't know that. Once I learned that, and I learned that put a sales force around a guy that knows how to raise money, I mean, anything. And that's what the book is about. And the book has 12, 13 examples of people I actually found and interviewed, all in different kinds of businesses. All of them started with nothing or with virtually nothing, and all of them put themselves to become millionaires within 3 to 7 years on the average. So it's not like I was unique. Other people had done it, and I knew a lot of very strong, accomplished people could do the same thing if they just knew how to do it. I will tell you, I've gotten, I think, 15 different people respond to me since then that they have got their $1 million because of the book that I wrote. And I just, today at the grocery store, I spread the word everywhere. And the guy in the produce department, Caesar, I was talking to him one day, and he was telling me how, he really wanted to have a business someday, blah, blah, blah. Excuse my blah, blah, blah. And I gave him my card, and I said, I will gift you my book. Just email me. I'll send you a copy of the book. And he took it to heart. And he just told me, I guess that was about 2 months ago. He told me he'd read the book. He'd done the things I'd said. He'd raised the money. He was explaining to me his business plan. He's just so excited. He just couldn't get it all out, And that's very rewarding to know that you're really helping folks.
Yeah, well, I imagine it's wonderful. So that kind of begs the question: you made this this really interesting career, and you created this nonfiction book, and then you moved to fiction. What drove your desire to write fiction?
Well, the nonfiction book was to help people. I mean, that's solely it. I wasn't trying to make a buck on it. I really wanted to have a solid message that was truthful that could help people. So, that brings me to another point that I like to express to people. Fiction for me it's so invigorating. It is so youthful. I'm constantly learning, as you suggested earlier, I think. It's an endless, vast reservoir of learning and experiencing. You have on the writing craft side, you're constantly learning. As I just mentioned, I just wrote, after writing 4, I guess 5, third-person limited books, I finally experienced a first-person present, which was not easy, thinking through that thing. But now, again, that's another check mark of something that I have learned. And a different genre, psychological thriller is a little different than the crime thrillers I usually write. And then on the other side, as you write these books, you learn so much. Your authors take you places that you might never go and do things you would never do. And it's quite invigorating on the author side. And, I hope that I'm creating stories that will transport readers to places they would never go and do things they would never do.
I think you're articulating what drives people to write. Like when people I consider storytellers are the ones who are doing exactly what you say. They're invigorated by the writing. They have an urge to write the stories, and even if only their family and friends reads it, they're going to write those stories. You mentioned the first verse third person limited. What were the like? I as it turns out, we write the same things, right? I write psychological suspense thrillers in the first person, and I also write third person limited thrillers like espionage, international thrillers, crime. So what was the challenge? Why did you try it? Did you try it just as an experiment? And what was the challenge in moving to third or first person in this latest book?
Um, the reason I did that is I wrote my first set of books are vigilante books, and and then the next one is the Dexter meets Reacher, and so that's what I had written so far, and this particular publisher I really would like to get in front of, and they have indicated interest in the writing that I'm doing. So I looked at a lot of the books that they publish, and I figured that all their best-selling thriller books, have or many of them, have a female lead. There is, everybody's represented in there. There's usually a gay person in there somewhere. A lot of key positions are held by women. The white guys are usually alcoholics and have a problem with life. I hope that comes across okay with a mixed audience. But, I tried to write that book. So that book, The Toe Killer, Pink Moon thriller, crime thrillers, it has all of those elements. The female lead is a biracial homicide detective. She's chasing a serial killer that likes to cut off toes. The serial killer takes a liking to her. Now he's chasing her. She accidentally kills a mob son, so they've hired a hit woman to kill our protagonist. And she has a daughter who's dying of leukemia that's 6 years old, and that's something she has to deal with too. Oh, and her chief of detectives is a gay woman, very strong personality. So I try to bring all those different elements into that story. And I didn't answer your question, but that's what led me to that book.
Can I ask you just a follow up on that? So
Sure.
when you're describing a particular publisher and you're looking at like what elements made it marketable and what the commonality between their bestsellers, how do you draw the line between trying to write to market versus putting elements in a book that the story requires? Or does that distinction even make sense?
Well, I think it makes sense if you focus too much on exactly creating what you think they want. But if you take those elements in general and you write your own story, almost any character in either of our books probably could be a man or a woman, could be gay, could be anything. So plugging those types of characters in, it just becomes a choice. So you really aren't changing your story per se. You're just bringing the characters in that apparently are more popular or more marketable to the market right now.
And
And
how do you immerse yourself in a character that's, say, very different from yourself, whether it's a cultural background, race, sexual orientation, or whatever? Like, because, the characters, their choices must be driven by who they are, right? So what kind of, do you do research? Do you talk to people? Do you beta readers? What do you do to get your head into that very different space?
you know, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I wrote The Toe Killer with the biracial female detective in the lead, the protagonist, it never dawned on me to do things different. You know, I, I think, I mean, obviously women are different than men, and every racial bias or racial characteristics maybe subtly are subtly different in different places. But as far as the general story, it's the same. She wants her daughter to survive. She wants to do the right thing. All those things are the same. So I never really consciously tried to wrap myself into her bio. I just felt the character. It's not like I did it like a white guy. I just felt her character. There are some scenes in there where she's taking grief from the cops. Some of the black cops are giving her some extra grief, and I'm able to write those just because I tried to write it the way it's supposed to be. I will say, when I was done with that book, I did want to make sure I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't accidentally stepped on toes or anything. There are sensitivity readers out there, which I didn't even know until I got to this phase in my book. But I had two different sensitivity readers. One was biracial and one was black, and they were both women. Read my novel and to edit it for sensitivity. They had some minor things. I mean, just really minor, nothing that probably would have offended anybody. But I went back and fixed those. So, I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something stupid in there.
Sure. I've done that too. I guess what's interesting about the most interesting thing out of all that is how you talk about your head in that character's mind and just doing the things that character would do, and that's sort of like alchemy, right? Like that's sort of a kind of magic that happens because you're disappearing inside this character to create things, but then the reader also is creating their own story based on your words on paper. Is there anything you do that helps you get into that state or get into a character, or does it take time from you just from the time when you first start writing before you can hear that character's voice?
Uh, no. Um, I just, when a character hits me, I just start writing in that character. And, my philosophy, as I sort of alluded to before, is get the words on paper. And so as long as and I don't always have a strong sense of where I'm going. As a matter of fact, that's why I'm a pantser and not an outliner. I've tried to think about being an outliner, and I've had people tell me they've converted, but for me, the excitement of being a pantser is I don't know where the story is going to go. Nobody can pick my book up and say, "Oh, I knew where that was going," because I didn't know when I write these, and I find all kinds of places. Every time I write something and it seems too easy, I'll go back and I'll make it hard for them, and that just changes the direction of the story many times. And so I'm just constantly looking for places to, throw rocks into the scene, and it always sort of shifts it. And so I challenge anybody to pick my book up and read the first 3 chapters of any of them and tell me they know where it's going to go. They don't.
If you're a pantser and that's the way you're enthusiastic about your writing and that's the way story comes to you, I wouldn't try to change it all. Like everyone has a different process. I interview so many people. Some people write with pen and paper. Some people dictate. People do it at different times of day. They outline everything. Some do deep character sketches. Some spend months in a character's head to try to hear the voice. Others just start writing. Like whatever works for you. Like I would not try if that's what I've heard that from a few authors too, who talk about if being surprised by the story and if they outline, they feel like they aren't. But I think it's just how people think differently. Some people can kind of imagine because you're both doing it the same way, pantsers and plotters. Just one of you's doing it in advance.
Yeah.
So how did you learn the craft when you first said, "Okay, I'm home. This writing is something I want to do." Now fiction fits my lifestyle, and you're clearly a storyteller. How did you go out and read books or podcasts, or how
Oh,
did you teach yourself?
I think, yes, I read books. I read books, but I don't know if you agree or not, but usually you pick up a couple of things in a book, but it's just very hard to really make that change what you're doing. What I learned the most from is beta readers and editors, especially since my first novel, the first draft was so bad as far as structurally and all those types of things. Matter of fact, I thought it was done. I had done usually when I get the draft done, I'll do 3 beta reads. And I'll change the things they suggest. 3 more beta reads, change the things they suggest. And then I'll get a light edit. And then I'll do 3 more beta reads. And then I now am at a position where I know the 2 editors are going to finish up for me. The next to the last editor, she is great for adding a sentence here or changing a little bit there, that kind of a thing. But she misses a lot of the actual grammar stuff. And then my final editor, I call her a grammar Nazi because when she edited my first book and sent it back, she didn't even make a note. I like it, I didn't like it. There was no notes at all. It was, here is the final version of your edit. And I, I emailed her back. Can you give me a hint? Did you like it or is it horrible? Oh no, I love the book. It was really great and this and that. And she wrote 4 or 5 paragraphs about all the things she liked in the book. So that's my grammar Nazi. And so once I
Well,
get,
it's a skill, right? Giving feedback and
oh yeah,
understanding that writers have created art and that they probably need. I've heard someone, I didn't come up with this, but they call it the compliment sandwich. Say something nice, give the criticism, then say something nice. It's a way for people to consume your criticism without feeling bad.
absolutely. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, so when you did your first book, and I mean, it's interesting because so many people do that, right? They think they want to write a book, they write something, but they're breaking all the rules, they're making all the mistakes. I mean, we all do that. Like in many ways, you just have to write yourself through all the bad stuff, right, to get to the good stuff. What did you feel like when you had that first book published and you got the box of books and you opened it up and you're now holding this thing that had only existed in your mind in your hand? Tell us a little bit about that moment, because that's a big deal for an author.
Yeah, I mean, you just have a tremendous sense of pride. The other thing that sort of comes that you don't really think about is people start giving you more, a little extra respect for actually writing a book, you know. Um, I didn't expect that. I mean, if you haven't written a book, it seems like a big deal that you have. So, but yeah, I mean, I felt a lot of pride in getting that done. But you got to remember that was my second book.
Did
The,
it feel different having published fiction compared to your nonfiction?
yeah, I mean, completely different because the fiction is more like an investigative reporter, I guess. You know, I'm collecting stories, I'm recording facts, I'm laying out the facts. But obviously, with the fiction, it's just night and day. I don't even know if that's enough to express it. I mean, fiction is nothing like that. I will say that I love to bring as much realism as I can. So if I bump into something that I don't really know, of course, we have uh, the internet and everything. But I always like to talk to somebody that's in that profession, and I'll always get something that will wind up in the book. In in Kill Crime, in Kill Crime, one of the investigators needs to get a car in a different city, but he doesn't want to have any record of it. So I'm thinking, would they let you walk in and give you cash and take a car out? I mean, they're not supposed to. So I called a used car guy in Boston, and I said, you know, if a guy came in there and offered you, say, $1,000 a day, but no records, and he gets to take one of the cars off your used car lot and use it, would you let him do that? He says, is this being recorded?
So yes.
So yeah, he told me that he would, and then he gave me a few other things, you know, interesting facts I wouldn't have thought of that wove their way into the diet or the manuscript.
Do you
Another
do this research in advance, or do you do it as you go, or both?
as I go, I almost do no research before I start. I just start writing, and then when I hit something that I don't know or is interesting, see, another thing I do is if I don't know the way something's going to go, I usually will go ahead and write it, you know, the way I think it would go. And then I will call an expert and find out the way it really went. And I'll go back and change it to make sure it flows in. But I think it's a time killer if you stop and start researching something you're going to write. Because when do you quit researching? When do you know enough? You know, you research, you're not writing. So I write it the way I think it's going to be. Then I call somebody and I get the way it really is and fix it up accordingly. Or I'll send what I've done to them. I often do that, especially police officers. You know, I'll write a scene, then I'll send it. I have a friend who's a cop, but he wasn't a deputy dog. He was Houston Police Department. So I called the sheriff's department. I said, I've got a scene. I'm a novelist, and a deputy investigates, you know, a abusive situation. He gets a call. Is there anybody I can have look at that? And they had a cop call me, and he said he'd love to look at it. So he read through it, gave me some suggestions, and pointed a few things out. And it's right, you know. That's why I fix a lot of that stuff.
A lot of crime authors will do like a Citizens Academy, or they'll do ride-alongs. Have you ever done something like that?
You know, I just have never had time with the wife. I would love to do the FBI Citizens Academy. There is one here in Houston. Um, and if time ever frees up, but right now I don't have the time to do that.
So you've written these series. So well, before I ask you that, what drove you to go to thrillers as a genre, and what is it? And what is it that makes it a thriller?
Well, I had a book idea in my head since God, I don't know, since '93. It wasn't really a developed idea. I just thought, wouldn't it be neat if you traded off? If you had to kill somebody, books have been written about that. And so when I sat down there to write something with nothing in mind, I thought, well, I'm going to write about an oil guy, you know, that has some money, and his wife and son get killed, and he's going to go after. Well, the cops don't get it done, so he's got to take justice into his own hand. So that part just sort of started flowing out of me, and then as I said, I threw rocks and changed scenes, and introduced some mob guys from Vegas, and um, that's how that book came about.
Do
And
you did you know like is this what you read? Do you know like reader expectations? Did you know the tropes of the genre, or was it just because it was that one idea and you figured, "Oh, I'll just go with
yeah,
it"?
that was it. The only thing I researched is how long should a thriller be?
What was going back? Like, what was the biggest mistake with like your first book and the writing of it? Like you mentioned a bunch of
Easy.
things that wasn't ready. What was the way for? It was one thing.
Yeah, the biggest mistake is I introduced a major character too late. I introduced a major character about halfway into the book, and matter of fact, I didn't quite finish my story. I thought it was ready to publish. I mean, I would have sent it out to agents, and I was looking on Fiverr. I use Fiverr a lot. I'll use the editors and beta readers on Fiverr, and I saw somebody on Fiverr that said, "We'll do a complete developmental edit, $30, introductory offer. I'm just getting started." I thought, $30? Now you may have a couple of ideas. So I sent it to him, and he came back and he said, "My gosh, you introduced this major character so far in the story. This is horrible. You got to move him up into the front of the story." So that was the biggest mistake. That had never crossed my mind. That's where he came into the story for me. But when I
Yeah,
moved,
how do you know, right? Like if when writers are doing this, they're making story out of whole cloth, and
yeah,
then it's so easy to go back later and say, "Well, look what you did," but the whole thing came out of their head.
yeah.
But yeah, that might have been the best $30 you ever spent.
Oh, good. There is no doubt in the world that that lesson is so ingrained in my head. You know, I introduce all my major characters if I can in the first two chapters. Yeah, I love to alternate getting a book going. First chapter is this character, second one, and then you bring them together 3, 4 chapters in, or maybe even later in the book. Um, that way, you're following those major characters right from the beginning, and I'll never make that mistake again.
How much do your characters change, especially because you're writing a series, you have multiple books? I mean, they can't have major change in each book, right? So how much do you know what that change is going in, and how much do they do over the course of the manuscript?
The change for the Kill Crime series has been the change has been in their commitment to being vigilantes and to make sure they get bad guys. They're willing to turn people over to the cops. It's just 90% of the time they get backed into a corner. They don't have the evidence to give the cops. The guy's going out to kill somebody else, so they're sort of forced into taking justice. They aren't just out there killing folks because they like to kill them. So, you know, without giving anything away, the first book's sort of setting it up, and my main guy, Jeff Case, is sort of building a little team. He hires a private investigator, and so you get a little team together. And then the second book, the team gets a little bit bigger. Another person comes in, and he's chasing serial killers. And then in the third book, he hires a private pilot, and he gets a jet. So then the team's a little bigger now. I mean, the guy's ex-DEA, ex-CIA. He's flown lots of black ops. He's over retirement age, but he's got a lot of gumption left. And for that particular book, just since we're talking with no particular roadmap, which was really interesting for me, is I wanted a jet, a private jet, that could land anywhere. And that's when I found the private jet that would land anywhere, on grass or damn near rocks or whatever there is. And boy, I can't even think of the name of it now. You might know what it is. But I talked to the company. I called them, told them I was thinking of introducing this book, or jet in the book, and could I put it on the cover? And they gave me permission to put the jet on the cover.
I love it.
And there are some major scenes there when they're getting to Mexico. They don't have a runway. And, he makes a pass at night with goggles, and it looks like it's okay. And, it's as realistic. Oh, and I also, after I wrote those scenes, I sent it to the pilot that I found, who flies those, and he made a few corrections in there. He says, "That's accurate." So I felt like I captured the essence of how that would really feel to set a plane down in Mexico and damn near fall into a ravine.
You've said, you do all the research. Your writing is good. You've gone through all these steps. You're using beta readers and editors, and you're doing everything right here. I'm curious about your actual process in the publication, right? Because you mentioned you read something ready to send out to agents. Can you tell everybody? Because our audience is readers and authors, but it's probably slightly skews towards authors as well. But you mentioned your first book. Oh, I'm embarrassed to talk about how all the things I did wrong, but we all do that, right? I'm still doing it in books. Like I get that's part of the process. It's writing that million words, right? And you get better and better and better as you go. Your 15th book is better than your first in a lot of ways. So tell us a little bit about your publication process. Tell us about your journey.
Okay, I wrote Kill Crime, sent it out to 50 agents. 3 of them replied. They didn't say I'm ready to take your book, but they made some nice remarks and said maybe if you did this or that, send it back, we'd take a look. And I read at that time a book, Write, Publish, Repeat. That's the name of the book if anybody wants to look it up. Write, Publish, Repeat. It's very good. It gives you a lot of just, make sure you write a giveaway and have that giveaway short story on your website. So, people, you can collect their names, a lot of little things like that and some bigger things. But the big thing that caught me as a independent author, you won't make any money really until you get 3 books out, because one book can't carry the cost of the promotion. Once you get at least 3 books out, now you only promote your first book. And of course, you want the read through. The read-through usually is 50 to 60% to the second book, and if it's really good, it holds up almost the same into the rest of the books, or it could, and usually drops off slightly from book to book. So I stopped sending things to agents and decided I was going to write 3 books and self-publish them. And it's very easy to self-publish. Vellum, it's so easy. Vellum is the software. It's relatively cheap. I think maybe it's like $130 or something for life, and they keep sending you updates. I just can't emphasize how easy it is. It formats it for you. You just drop in the chapters, and you add as many appendixes as you want. So that's how you go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to follow up. So you're talking about the formatting here. But on the marketing of the series, you're saying push the first book and then take 50-60%. We'll go to book 2 and book 3 or whatever. Do you have entry points within the series where like a reader could pick up book 2 or 3 to start, or are you just all your marketing driving people to book 1?
Okay, 2 questions come out of that, and I hope I remember both of them, or 2 answers. The first one is all of my books are standalone. I make sure that if you read a book, even the second and the third book, you get enough up front, you know what's going on, and the story's wrapped up at the end. I usually leave some kind of a thread. It's not a major thread or anything like that, but it's something that you can pull that into the next book. And the other thing was, do I have an entry point? Well, the entry point is anywhere you want. It's funny, I read a review today, and because I just gave away Kill Crime on BookBub, and the review was, it's funny, I started with the last book, then I read she started with Spike, and then she read Kill Crime 3, then she read Kill Crime 2, and then when this came out free, she read Kill Crime. And she said, it's very unusual that I've read this series backwards, but every book stood by itself, was a great story. This is paraphrased, of course. And when I finally got to book one, it all made so much sense. The main character and how they all got their beginning. So all my books are standalone, and I notice I have a newsletter I put out, and one of my questions I asked recently is, how do you feel about cliffhangers or a book finishing? Independent story in each book. I was amazed it was about 50-50. I thought it was much higher, and if you look at other polls and stuff, I don't think most people like cliffhangers. So I don't want to force somebody to read the next book to figure out what's going on. I don't like that. And so that's why I work very hard to wrap a story up in each of the books that I do. As
So
far
if
as,
you're pulling,
go ahead.
sorry, if you're pulling 50% from one book to the other, are you acquiring new readers to make up that difference, still using book one as the magnet, or are you also doing some of the marketing on the current book in the series?
No, I'm only marketing Kill Crime. I am marketing Spike a little bit because it does not have the read through because it's a separate book. I do think what I'm going to do, I am going to do this, is I need to put on the cover of Spike a kill in the kill in the Kill Crime universe or a Kill Crime universe book. That might be enough to pull readers over into that from the Kill Crime series. Um, but the Kill Crime really just pushes the Kill Crime series 1, 2, and 3.
So there's like somewhere north of 2 million self-published books every year that are coming out. How do you separate yourself and rise above that noise to have what are quality books? How do you get readers to pay attention to you?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't think you want to think that you're out there fighting amongst 2 million books. I think you just want to focus on writing the absolute best book you can and go through the marketing. I mean, that's all you can do. I will say, because I've talked to so many authors, I don't think I mentioned this, but I have a book club, and so I have interviewed about 60 authors, most of them independents, because they're the easiest ones to get to come to the book club. Facebook is about the only thing that works for them. The Amazon ads, you just have to crank too much money into those to get the algorithms working. So it's a huge gamble for an independent author to make all that work. With that said, I'm sure some independents are doing it. But by and far, the only thing most of the people I talk to was making work is the Facebook ads.
And so, are you going to continue to indie publish, or are you looking at going the traditional route as well?
Uh, all options are open. I'm going to put more time into the marketing. I really have not put much time into marketing at all, but I know what I need to do. I have sort of placeholder marketing out there, so I'm breaking even on the books I'm selling and the money I'm making just so I keep a presence. But I'm going to try to find somebody to handle that for me. And then if I get a publisher for a new book, ideally I would write 2 books a year, one to continue my indie stuff, and one for the publisher because they're going to want at least 1 book a year.
Yeah, often more.
Yeah,
it's
I know.
it seems like traditional publishing is moving more towards indie publishing with their quick release schedules and things. So let's just do a quick round here. I always ask writers about their process. You said you are a pantser. Do you have a particular time that you write?
I'm probably unlike most authors because of my other commitments. I will write whenever I have time. Some days I won't write much at all. Sometimes it'll go for a week or more. But what I do is when I really buckle down to where I know I'm going with the book and I've got a few chapters, I will work on it every single day, Saturday and Sunday, and pound out that first draft in 60 to 75 days.
Do you find it's harder to get back into flow when you've been away for a few days or a week from a
Nope,
story?
not at all.
Wonderful. And what do you write in? Do you write in Word or Scrivener or
Word,
paper and pencil?
word.
Do you listen to music when you write?
No, but one of the authors I talked to, a lady, she listens to a different song for every book. She lets it play in the background the entire time, and every one of her novels, she can tell you the song that she listened to right in that novel.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I do like playlists, or I listen to a certain type of music depending on what it is I'm writing. Do you use any other writing tools like editing software
Uh, well, Pro Writer, or I got a
or
couple
writing
friends
aid?
like that that remind me to fix things in the manuscript that you know can easily be fixed. That's pretty much all I use.
Are you able to write anywhere, or or just at your home office?
No, I could write anywhere. It's just situations such that, and I don't write in the office. I write on the couch sitting beside my wife.
Yeah. Are there any tips you would give to new writers for how they could more quickly develop a writing habit?
Well, like yourself, I've talked to so many writers. I am amazed at how people do it so much differently. If they're professional and they're trying to make a living with it, most of them will at least write 4, 5 hours a day. This one lady that listens to music, she writes 7 hours every day, which is significant. Um, but most authors you ask about me, you know, I write, as I said, sitting beside the wife, um, and I don't get much writing in. When I can pound it out quick, I can sit there 3 or 4 hours and write. But if I don't have that time, then I have to sort of work it in whenever I can.
So I always ask one question of all of the interviewees, and that is, where do you think story comes from? And it sounds a little simplistic at first, but it's actually a complicated question. When you're making these stories out of whole cloth, where does this magical kind of thing come from?
For me, they come from things I might like to do or envision I would do if, no constraints and, you're not worrying about getting killed or anything like that. Just, be as wild and crazy and loving and hating. And you got to turn all the juices up. And so they come from your experience, obviously. I mean, that's the bottom line answer for everybody. They come from your experience, but your experience is only, I guess, the takeoff point because I haven't killed anybody in real life, and I have flown. So there's some. I was an aviation officer in the Army, and I was an Army officer. So all those things come into my stories. Um, I don't know. Is that a good enough answer?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's excellent. Where should readers go to find you?
Well, I'm on Amazon. I also have a website, Mike Slavin Author. Um, but the easiest way to find me, I guess, would be on Amazon, Mike Slavin. And there is one other Mike Slavin, but he's Scottish and he doesn't write thrillers, so I don't think there's going to be a big misunderstanding.
Well, Mike, your writing is really good, and I'm really struck by how similar we are in our process and the way we approach the writing, and certainly our subgenres of thriller as well. So I appreciate you coming on, and I would encourage our readers to go take a look at your work. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.